Hello everyone, my name is Harold Shorter, and thank you for having me here in order to present on analyzing the organization for Tiger Tech Incorporated. Today, we'll be doing an overview of the organization, an overview of human resource analytics, then we'll move into our areas of examination, which include absenteeism, health, wellness, and welfare, turnaround forecast, and then we'll conclude. Our organizational overview. Our company name is Tiger Tech Incorporated. We currently employ 50 people, with our large demographic being between the ages of 26 and 44 for both male and female employees. We're located in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and we produce software for small businesses. As you see right there, our payroll is just short of $7 million annually. Currently in Baton Rouge, our local industry has traditionally been focused on petrochemicals and associated products with that. But the industry is currently transforming to support tech companies. As you can see on the next to last bullet, we're competing with a lot of larger companies beginning to move in. With such a small company, we have to make sure that we're doing the right things to keep people working here and to attract them to us. Our largest pool of recruits is, of course, Louisiana State University. Just this past year, they had 22 graduates with a bachelor's in science and computer engineering. However, there are about 600 people split between their graduate and undergraduate programs currently enrolled at the university. Before we move into our areas of examination, quick overview of human resource analytics are. They are data, tools, metrics, and predictors. However, they are not perfect and they are not answers in and of themselves. No matter what the data says, we must always be able to take that data and parse information from it in order to make decisions for the organization. Today, we'll be working within the LAMP model. We will not be looking at logic today. However, we will be looking at analytics, measures, and processes, which then inform human resources metrics, which is of course, the force for strategic change within the organization. Our areas of examination, as touched on before, are absenteeism, health, wellness, and welfare, and turnaround forecasts. These were picked because they're really solid areas that we can look at to actually show the effect of analytics on an organization. Absenteeism is defined as any failure to report for or remain at work as scheduled, regardless of reason. As you can see here, unscheduled absences can consume 9% of payroll. Combined with turnover, which we will touch on later on in the presentation, absenteeism costs can bankrupt a small company. Down here at the bottom, you see some data that we use in order to use a calculator to show what absenteeism can actually do to a company. And this is the expanded formula that we're going to use in order to use this calculator. As you can see here on this slide, the total estimated cost of money lost to absenteeism is over $1 million. Our payroll is just short of $7 million. So losing $1 million in such a small company is huge, and it puts us in a bad position. So these are things that we want to fix with analytics. What we would use is diagnostic analytics. That is used to identify patterns and underlying trends within the information. With that diagnostic analytics, which we would collect biannually and revise quarterly, we can decide and figure out if the company is supporting the right things with our employees. Meaning, do they feel comfortable taking scheduled absences? That can include leave, vacations, things like that. Can we shift to telework? Do we even have the money to shift to telework? As a tech company, that's something that we can do, but are we in a good position to do that? Should absenteeism be tied to employee evaluations? As in, if you're not showing up to work without it being planned, is it something that should affect you? And then lastly, of course not least, is the company facilitating effective work-life balance? With us being a startup, as we'll see a little bit later, some employees may want to work a little bit more than they should, and which can lead to burnout and other negative things. This slide is just a quick show of the timeline that we would use as we're collecting information, and you will see this again within the presentation. Moving on to health, wellness, and welfare. Wellness represents the balance of physical, emotional, social, spiritual, and intellectual health. As I briefly mentioned before, startups are high-pressure environments, and a lot of workers may feel obligated to work extra, and they also may move into things that we don't want them to do, destructive tendencies. Tech work is also relatively sedentary. You have to type a lot, you have to do a lot of coding, things like that. You're not really moving around a lot within the office. So what we can do with analytics is look at these things and use that to drive health related things within the organization. It does take a lot of work and it does take a lot of time, but analytics can help us plan these things out far in advance. One thing we'll look at is alcohol abuse. Within the tech industry and within the startup industry as a whole, alcohol abuse is huge. Some that we don't want to have within our organization, especially as small as we are right now. Looking at this table, we can see the effects of the just 50 people. If only 30% of each cohort has an alcohol problem with their average wages, which we saw earlier in the presentation, we can lose over $2 million in productivity with an estimated loss of $208,000, almost $209,000 just to alcohol. That's something that we don't want within our organization. So what we can use is prescriptive analytics. Prescriptive analytics will predict outcomes. It needs a lot of data in order to work, but if we have an effective way of looking at all the things that come into play, i.e. Obesity, cardiovascular problems, even sleep issues, things like that, and if we use programs to fix those problems, then our return on that investment can be massive. According to Casco, Boudreaux, and Fink in 2019, an effective intervention can result in an average of $3.48 return on investment per $1 spent. That's massive for our company. Even though we're spending a lot of money up front in order to fix things or to put programs in place, is something that we can do to help our people stay here, and can also be a recruiting thing for people who are coming into the workspace. And again, as you saw before, here's a brief timeline showing how we would collect things. Before, where the absenteeism is a little bit shorter, we can do that on a quarterly basis. But for health, wellness, and welfare, sometimes it takes a little bit longer for those results to show. So of course, the timeline is a little bit stretched out. But of course, we'll be revising this once the program gets set in place to make sure we have the right programs. Lastly, we move into turnover and forecast. Turnover is defined as the act of losing one employee and replacing them with another. According to SHRM, 1/3 of employee salary is consumed during turnover. That is, again, a lot of money for our organization. As I briefly touched on before, with absenteeism combined with turnover, and then also with the health and wellness things that can be lost to negative tendencies within the organization, we want to make sure we're doing the right things, bringing the right people in, and retaining the right people so that our organization continues to be strong. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. Again, just example data we use within the calculator. As we look at this slide, we'll just briefly touch on how much it can cost just to do a basic turnover. So with just 10 people being turned over within our organization, we come out to just under $900,000 attached to replacing them. So that's replacing 10 people within an organization. So these are things that we want to make sure that we're doing right, and we're doing early, and we're predicting it so we can have it within our budget as we move forward. What we would do partially within here is use predictive and prescriptive information. The predictive analytics will help us collect that data, and then the predictive will allow us to forecast into the future. You see here the timeline that we would use in order to assess certain things to make sure that we have the information that we need to have good forecasts. And again, as I've touched on a couple times in the PowerPoint, here's the timeline that we would use. As we show here in this slide, some of the timelines of getting the data are going to be happening at the same time. So not exactly how it's laid out here in this slide, but there are going to be things that we're constantly doing in the background to make sure that we have the right programs in place. So as we move into the conclusion, as I touched on before, analytics are not the complete answer for an organization. However, they can place an organization in the right position to make sure that they're making the right decisions at the right time to have the right outcomes. We're a very small company right now. We're very early in our development. One thing that we can do if we use these analytics right now is to establish baselines. We can establish baselines with all sorts of programs that we at least can afford. And we can use those to both retain people and to create passive recruitment opportunities. Conversations are had within the industry, and we can be a leader right now with effective analytics to have that conversation across the board and keep the people that we have and bring more people in. Thank you for having me in to talk about analytics with your organization. If you have any questions, please contact me.